Way back in 2005, two brothers set off on a road trip that would save the world and change television.
William and Harry.
No, not those brothers.
Art thou certain?
Quite. For 15 seasons and 327 episodes, Supernatural took audiences on a wild ride of family, fate, and faith with a rocking soundtrack and a seriously cool car.
But that was then, Bobo, and this is now. And yes, the show has quote-unquote ended, but we're not quite done with the journey.
No, we're not.
And that's why we're watching it all over again, or for Rob and me, for the first time,
That's right.
diving deep into every episode of Supernatural with the fine folks who made it. And we're taking you along for the ride.
Whether you like it or not. I'm Rob Benedict. I played Chuck Shirley, a.k.a. God.
Spoiler.
Yeah, it is a bit of a spoiler, but hey, spoilers are fair game here.
Fine. And I'm Richard Speight Jr., and I played the Trickster, also known as the Archangel Gabriel, and I did a little bit of Loki work in there.
Okay, you know we're running out of time.
Okay, well, we'll be talking about the entire series, so whatever we say, accept it. You've been warned.
So buckle up and settle in.
Because this, my friend, is Supernatural, then and now.
Hey everybody, it's Rob Benedict.
And I'm Richard Speight.
And we're talking about Season 2, Episode 14.
Born under a bad sign.
Yeah, that's how
You know
the song
the blues
goes.
tune, right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
You know the tune.
Who doesn't?
You, I think.
This guy.
He's seen thrown. That's what it's called, Born Under a Bad Sign. Robbie, break it down for us. Summarize it.
Well, Sam's been missing for a week. When Dean finally connects...
You mean seven working days or 5 days like a work week?
I think it's a 7-day work week for these guys.
Okay.
So a week,
Long
so
week.
7 days. 7 days as the moon goes.
Okay.
As the sun rises.
Okay.
When Dean finally connects with him, he's covered in blood, doesn't remember
Who
anything.
is Dean? Dean's covered in blood?
No, when Dean finally connects with Sam, Sam's covered in blood. He doesn't remember anything, and he's in a motel room in Twin Lakes, Iowa, which to me is Tuesday night for Jared Padalecki.
That's good. Fair enough.
The boys follow some clues and trace Sam's last location to a hunter's house. When the boys get there, they discover the hunter's dead body inside.
Oh, no.
Yeah, they watch a security video that shows Sam wrestling with the hunter, overpowering him, and then slitting his throat.
Are we sure that hunter wasn't actually Osric Chow and it wasn't a green room in Italy?
It might have been. This is it's a very reality show here.
I've seen this scene before.
Yeah, Dean hypothesizes that it must have been a shapeshifter. Sam disagrees and says that Dean must kill him. Dean refuses, and Sam knocks him out. This is all in the first 10 minutes, by the way, guys.
Yeah, a lot going on.
Sam tracks down Joe in Duluth, Minnesota. He starts to sexually assault her. She resists.
Yeah, man, that was awkward to watch.
It was really awkward and awful. But he knocks her out. When she wakes up, she's tied to a pillar. And Sam starts to taunt her by saying that his dad put a bullet in her dad's head. And Dean bursts in through the door, guns drawn just at the last moment. Sam begs Dean to shoot him. Dean throws holy water on him instead, and it reveals that a demon has been possessing Sam.
Oh, man.
So Demon Sam jumps out a window to escape. Dean pursues. Demon Sam ends up on a wharf, a dead end. Dean catches up with him and gets shot by Demon Sam. Dean's body falls in the water, and Demon Sam leaves, presuming Dean is dead. Now, you try to say that 5 times fast.
That's a lot of Dean, baby. Demon Sam leaves, presuming Dean is dead. Woo!
So Demon Sam heads to Bobby's.
By the way, when you say, you know what's really effed up too?
Yeah.
As I'm listening to you say this, Demon Sam sounds a lot like Dean and Sam. So every time you're like, Demon Sam and Dean, I'm like, wait, how many Deans were there?
Dean and Sam followed Demon Sam. So Demon Sam heads to Bobby's, but Bobby's so smart. He's so street smart. He sees right through the ruse.
He gets it.
And he tricks possessed Sam into drinking holy water. Bobby is then able to tie up Demon Sam under a devil's trap. Dean arrives, and Bobby has started an exorcism. It is revealed that Sam is possessed by the same black-eyed demon that had possessed Meg. So the ritual isn't working because Sam has a binding symbol on his arm, and Dean is about to be killed. Suddenly, Bobby burns the binding symbol off with a hot poker.
Bobby burns the binding symbol. Oh, boy.
Bobby and the binding symbol. This forces the demon out. So Bobby gives the boys amulets to protect them from future possessions. Sam is pissed Dean wouldn't kill him. Dean says he's going to save him, not kill him.
Classic Dean.
Classic Dean. An unclassic Sam.
Okay, Robbie, break it down. Give me your unfettered review of Born Under a Bad Sign. Take it, Robbie.
I liked it. I once again, season 2 keeps surprising me. I mean, this was not like your typical episode. We see, obviously it takes you a while to kind of get caught up. Whereas in the past, I think some of the episodes you're like, oh, okay, right. I know what this is going to be. This is Monster of the Week or whatever it is. But in this one, you're like, wait, what's going on? Who, what, why is what, and you're just trying to figure it out just in the same,
Right.
at the same time that they're trying to figure it out. And it was just shocking to see Sweet Sam as this evil guy. Like, we haven't seen that kind of scene before. So I felt like it was shocking. It was really well done. I really love Bobby in this episode. He's, again, I don't know why I keep making these references, but I personally am also, as I'm binging this, I'm also binging Better Call Saul. And there are elements to this episode that remind me of Better Call Saul, just the way that it's shot. And Bobby kind of reminds me of this one character in Better Call Saul that's always really street smart and figuring things out.
I also love the show Better Call Saul, but I will tell people who are listening that Rob compares everything these days to Better Call Saul. I was in my hotel room, and he's like, that looks like a set from Better Call Saul.
See,
like,
when you say that, you remind me of Better Call Saul. You actually look like Saul right now. Anyway, so I really liked it. It's troubling to watch, but it was a good episode. A lot going on.
I thought it was great. I loved seeing Alona Tall come back in. Every time I see her on the show, I'm like, man, they could have used that character more, and the show would have benefited from it. She is the character's so three-dimensional. She's so good at that character, and her on camera relationship with Jared and Jensen is so fleshed out and intricate and nuanced. I love her coming into the show, and I think it elevated this show that they went to her and she became the bait. You know what I mean? Like the way that Sam and Demon Sam being so aggressive and violent towards her really affected me. Obviously, it would do so with that character being violent to any female, but a female that we already know and love. And there are not a lot of females we know and love in Supernatural. You know what I mean? So
there haven't been a lot of them. It
was a great use of that character, and she just did a great job as always. And that relationship is so cool.
Yeah, and you make a good point. I mean, there aren't enough female characters on this show, but when there are, they are very strong, and she's one of them. She's such a strong woman.
So good.
And,
and she's just such a good actress, too.
But you really believe her going through the fear, even though she's a really strong person who wouldn't. I would be scared of him.
Yeah, well, even with Dean not in the scene, you felt the tension between her and Dean. I mean, that's just great. Like, you could tell the way she played it.
Yeah.
It's so nuanced and well done.
Right.
Great writing in this episode. Great directing, which we'll talk more about this episode of our podcast. I'm going to go. I'm going to dive into the beard factor here. You ready?
Hit me.
I also, just to say, and we're going to dive into this with our interview, but there's some nuanced cinematography going on here that's just outstanding.
Yeah,
like not only was it well written and well acted by the gang, but first time director Miller Tobin did a great job. And so I'm going to go. This is again, man. I'm like a broken record here. I'm going full. I'm going Stapleton. I am. Yeah. I just feel like season 2 is just knocking it out of the park time and time again.
Yeah. I agree. How great was it at the end too when Dean hits Sam just for the hell of it, just like after
great
everything,
I
owe you a punch. I'm going to give it the full Kenny Loggins. Although I will add, it'd be like maybe one of Kenny Loggins' like slow ballads where it's like such a great song, but you don't necessarily want to go back and listen to it again right away.
So are you saying this is like Kenny Loggins in the 80s, like the 1980s Loggins beard? Because his 70s beard, like when he was doing Loggins Messina, that's like the picture that it is floating online to represent your beard.
Sure.
Big, bushy.
Sure, an 80s Loggins, although 80s Loggins
Danger Zone.
Danger Zone Loggins was top number one on the.
Well, you're giving this a good review.
And this is a top notch episode. It just the subject matter was troubling enough that I don't know if I'm not a big fan of the sexual assault business. So like I don't know if I can go back and watch it again, right? So that being said, it's a Loggins. Let's give it an 80s Loggins. We'll give it an 80s Loggins.
I'm just saying because the 80s is one of those fashion areas where like, oh, it was fun, it was cool, ain't going back.
Right,
you know what I mean? Like,
sure.
So
sure. I think that's
all right. So you heard it here first. Robbie gives it 1980s Kenny Loggins, and I give it a full Stapleton. By the way, the day Chris Stapleton shaves his beard, my entire review system comes crashing to the ground.
Yeah.
So, Chris Stapleton, if you're listening, and I bet you are, keep that beard big and bushy, buddy.
It's a good thing older Kenny Loggins, I think, has it just sort of weaved in at this point, and so it's not going anywhere.
Mr. Loggins, if you're listening, and I'm sure you are, I apologize for that indictment of your current beard.
So J. Miller Tobin directed 4 episodes of Supernatural. This was his first one here in season 2. Other TV credits include Numbers, Terminator, The Sarah Connor Chronicles.
Say that 5 times fast.
I mean,
I say it 1 time correctly.
I got through Demon Sam for the whole thing, and now the Terminator screws me up. Terminator, The Sarah Connor Chronicles, Gossip Girl, The Vampire Diaries, and Revenge.
Let's not forget he directed a short-lived CBS series called The Agency, which is how I know him.
Yes, he certainly did, and now we've got him in person.
Bring him on.
Okay, so Miller, we're talking about Supernatural.
Yes, we are.
And it's such a pleasure having you on. So you ended up directing 4 episodes?
4. Yep. This was the first of 4 that I did. And I loved doing the show. I mean, it's near and dear to my heart. I watched every single episode from, 101 to the end of the season. I was just a huge fan. Loved doing the show. Loved, watching the show. But when we moved to Atlanta and I started producing, directing, traveling to Vancouver became much more challenging, and I kind of took myself out of the running at that point.
Right.
Which is, as far as I'm concerned, I don't know what Kripke and the rest of those guys would say, or Singer, but but I felt like that was why I stopped doing the show. I mean, sure. I just stopped putting myself up for it and saying, I can't. From Atlanta, Vancouver's the one city that I can't travel to easily. And I come home almost every weekend when I'm working to see my family and spend time with my family. But again, I love doing the show. I'm, again, like I said, massive fan, watched every single episode top to bottom.
And so your last one was at the beginning of season 4. Was that your last?
Well, I did season 2, I did season 3, season 4, and season 5. I did 1 each season. So
look at that.
All right. And they were all very interesting shows. I mean, Bourne we'll talk about now. The next one I did was a very supernatural Christmas, which I
kind of
loved.
A legendary.
Do you remember that show? It was insane, just completely insane, and a blast. And then Heaven and Hell, and Free to Be You and Me, both of which were big sort of lore shows. Actually, Bourne is a lore show too, because it's about the 2 brothers. So
right. So our paths crossed, I'm sure, at that point. And now, how did you get the job this episode? How did it come your way?
I think it was probably because I had been working with the CW. I was an assistant director in New York for almost 20 years, 18 years. And I started working with Tom Fontana, who had done Homicide and Oz. I was the AD on Oz for 4 seasons, was pushing hard. Got to a point in my career where I was either going to go into producing and production managing or into directing, and decided I really wanted to stay on set and keep working, and took a shot, made a short. Tom finally, after 3 years of asking, gave me an episode. Turned around and gave me another episode, but and Oz was pretty hot at that point. It was the very first HBO show, so it was it was kind of a thing.
Wow.
Then it was 9/11, and I decided to go out to LA because New York was just a mess at that point. I had luckily signed with an agent, a really wonderful agent, and started doing CBS shows, and kind of segued into doing CW shows. And I think I got on the CW roster, and I started doing all of the CW shows for a while. Melrose, 90210, Supernatural, Vampire. I mean, all of them I was doing, I was just on their ticket. And that's probably, I don't really remember because it's been a while, but that's probably where it came from. Mm-hmm. I do remember because it was the first time I had traveled out of town. It was the first time I got to get on a plane and go do it.
Oh, is that right? Yeah. To fly to Vancouver.
Now you can't not get on a plane and go do it.
Little did you know that would be
exactly.
Yeah. The rarity is actually working in LA.
So you're going from, here's a question, because Oz is its own animal, like kind of a really cool place to cut your teeth.
Yeah.
But then you go to the CW, which is not Oz. I mean, it's not the same edge. It's funny. You kind of answered my question with your explanation, because I know you from The Agency, where we worked together.
Which was a huge break for me too, because that happened when I moved to LA, and I did 1 episode for them, and then Sean Cassidy turned around and hired me for 4 episodes the next season. So that was like that like solidified me in working,
you were
in LA.
Great director, which by the way I know as an actor, but I also know from watching your work. You watched this episode specifically, Born Under a Bad Sign, and I can see your Oz background in that show. because it's so different than everything we've seen up until this point, style wise.
Oh, really? Okay, interesting.
The cut style, the sort of the movement of it all. You go look at that opening sequence of Dean on the phone.
Well, that's exactly.
Like that whole thing is different.
Well, it was interesting. I mean, it's funny because I watched the show and I was kind of looking back and thinking about all this. And we could talk. You want to talk about the opening sequence? I mean, that's
good.
All right. So this was kind of an unusual episode in the sense that it's not Monster of the Week. I mean, there's obviously thing, but Supernatural's broken down into the sort of the lore episodes and then the case episodes. And this is almost somewhere in between, in the sense that the brothers have been just, cheek by jowl the entire season. And then all of a sudden you start the show and they've been apart and nobody knows what's happened. So it's a mystery, essentially. And what we wanted to do starting the show was just dig into Dean's sense of panic. Like, he can't find Sam. Sam's been missing for a week. It's like, this is totally fucked up. So we use, and again, I credit Anthony Pinker, who's a brilliant editor and did tons of these episodes, tons of the shows, tons of Supernaturals. We talked about this, how to make it unsettled. So the jump cuts, the rapid cutting, the bouncing back and forth, that was just laid right into the idea that we wanted to have that sense of panic from Dean, that that it was a crisis. There was something really, really heavy going on, and Dean was really concerned. And that cuts against sort of Sam, who's in the hotel room by himself, and there's these slow reveals of the bloody hand and all that. So again, kind of a counterpoint.
All that stuff is done so well, though. Like it's also on purpose. I mean, even the way that opening sequence goes, the camera starts not aimed at anything that we recognize.
Right.
There's water on the lens. Like I loved it. It just felt like we were watching like a 1970s cop drama.
You're right, exactly.
And once again, it's raining in Vancouver.
Well, it's so funny because that was the first. So this episode, the shooting schedule spanned over the Christmas break. And there are two things I remember about that happening, which is the night before we went on break, the AD scheduled like 2 scenes or 3 scenes like that Friday. And I'm like, what are you doing, man? I mean, you're just making the rest of these days harder. He goes, trust me, we're not going to work much that Friday. And lo and behold, he was right. Because the crew, everybody started partying right around lunchtime. By about 3 or 4 hours after lunch, nothing was getting done. It was all over. It just became a celebration. It became a Christmas party. And if you watch the scene where they find the knife in the VW in the back seat of the car, that's the scene, the last scene that we shot. Those boys were hanging on by a thread at that point. They were and then coming back after break, everybody was so happy. It was so cool. We were at the studio, and then we went out to shoot that thing. It was pissing ice cold rain.
Wow.
And that glad to be back moment lasted about 35 seconds before it was like, oh, put your hood up and go to work. Oh, God damn it.
Man.
I kind of feel, though, that I know that Vancouver is Vancouver, and so Vancouver is like the biggest character in all of these shows because of the weather. but I feel like it worked really well for that. Like I almost feel like you could have been brought in rain trucks and made it rain for that moment. It just had that.
Yeah, it did.
Sort of gritty feel of like, oh shit.
Isolation and weirdness and all of that stuff. Yeah, absolutely.
You did some cool reveals too in this whole episode. You used some cool reveals on details like Sam's knuckles. Like there was ways that we discovered details in this episode that were unique to your style or your style that you chose for this episode. Another one that stood out to me was the Alona Tall pulling the bullet out of Dean's arm. You come across all that stuff, shot glass, blink. Yeah. Like it tells so much story.
I mean, that's it. I mean, that's storytelling through the visual storytelling. I mean, that's the image. And rather than being so literal about it, maybe you can come up with some idea where you're feeding. Because basically, you're telling the audience, right? You're feeding them information through what you're showing them. So if you can tell all that story with just a few images or just this little slide reveal, or even if it's not explained at the moment, like we see the brand very briefly at the bar. Right. It's Sam's brand. And we don't know what it is at that point. It's just something. I mean, longtime fans will go, oh, that's fucked up. Okay. We know that's up to something, but we don't explain it until, the end of the show, really.
It's great. And they don't always do that on the show. And it gives the audience more credit for being smart enough to catch up with you. I'm watching Better Call Saul right now for the first time. And they do a lot of that. And I always think it's really genius. The episode will start and you're not quite sure what you're even looking at.
Right.
You know what I mean? Whether it's like a close-up of popcorn falling in a popcorn maker or something. You know what I mean? And then it becomes clear.
Right. Well, this was also an interesting show because it was, it's basically, I mean, there's almost no cast. I think there are like 6 cast members, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Right.
basically, Sam, Dean, Joe, and then
Bobby,
and then a couple of day players, right? That's it. So it's the show structurally. The show's kind of unusual also because it's very few scenes. I looked that up actually. It's like 35 scenes.
Oh wow!
So and it's all these two-handers, right? So you've got these long, very long scenes, which always scares me a little bit because, like as Richard knows, as an actor and a director, sustaining long scenes is challenging visually and emotionally both. I mean, the longer the scene goes, the harder you have to work to keep it alive, keep it afloat.
Especially like depending on if they put you in a hotel room,
right? Exactly.
Like it's like you're not walking through the library reshelving.
Right.
Books.
You're not. You can't keep it. Like my go-to. I always say is if I can put people in motion, I'll always do it. Whether it's a walk and talk or moving or dance, anything that if you can move people around a room, then that just helps keep the energy up. It keeps people engaged. This was challenging because again, you have these very long scenes. The hotel room, again, Sam and Joe in the bar, the scene with, at the end with the demon and the 3 of them.
Right.
There's in the bar, even the hunter's house. Those are all two-handers, right? They're long two-handers.
Right.
And so it was tricky, but the flip side of that is each of those sequences digs into kind of a long emotional beat. Like the first one in the hotel room is, where have you been? What the f***'s going on? The second one is, did you actually kill this guy? Or, are you really, am I going to have to kill you? On Dean's side. I mean, they're big emotional arcs in each of those scenes. So they sustain, but it's always tougher as opposed to a page and a half scene that has an in and an out and you get a piece of information and you move on. I mean, these were long kind of drawn out scenes. I personally love the emotions of those scenes. I love directing. I love digging into that with the actors. Again, if you're working with people like any member of the cast of Supernatural, then it's a joy. It's a pleasure.
Yeah.
Like driving a race car. I mean,
a lot of talent on that screen.
Yeah.
We'll be right back. Hey, this is Richard Spate. You know what? It's 2024. It's a brand new year, and I bet you made some New Year's resolutions, and I bet one of them was to eat healthier. Well, you can get cranking on that resolution right now, my friend, with Factor. Factor's ready-to-eat meal delivery takes the stress out of meal planning and sets you up for success in the new year. Skip the grocery stores, the prep work, the cooking fatigue. I'm getting tired just talking about it. Instead, get chef-crafted, dietitian-approved meals delivered right to your door. With over 35 meals to choose from per week, including options like keto, calorie smart, vegan, and veggie, and more, plus over 55 weekly add-ons, you will have a ton of nutritious and flavorful options to kickstart this resolution off right. Forget frantic lunch prep and rush dinner making. That stinks. Factor's 2-minute meals, yes, I said 2 minutes, are your secret weapon in the new year. You get to fuel up fast with restaurant-quality meals all delivered right to your door. It doesn't get any easier than that. And Factor now offers loads of snack options like breakfast, smoothies, juices, snacks, and more to keep you going no matter what's on the schedule. So I know what you're asking. Rich, how do I tap into this Factor magic? You head to factormeals.com/SPNTAN50 and use code SPNTAN50 to get 50% off. That's a lot off. That's code SPNTAN50 at factormeals.com/SPNTAN50 for 50% off. Make that resolution happen now and make it happen at a discount. Fantastic food that's healthy and delicious and delivered right to my door. Now that is how you start the new year off right. Thanks for supporting Supernatural then and now. And now, back to the show. So you had, it leads me to a scene that you had that was disturbing and unique up to this point. Benedict, unless I'm missing something, it was the first time I noticed a sexually threatening scene
in the bar. Yeah. And that was deliberate. I mean, that was, I can't remember. We must have talked about it because I don't think I would have brought that to the party unprompted.
And with Sam, no less, who's like, you know,
that's it.
The nice guy of the show.
Yeah, I mean the whole joke of this episode is eventually the reveal of the possession. And again, you know, Jared does a brilliant job of letting the demon trickle through. And we did have long talks about what that meant. I mean, he had to play it completely straight, you know, pure Sam, you know, up until those moments where we start to see it shift. And it shifts it for the first time we see it shift is in the bar, right? I mean, I think or actually when he hits Dean and walks out, we see it in his eyes.
Yeah.
For a brief second. And then he goes to the bar, and we still, again, I think the audience should not be clear at that point about whether something's really wrong with Sam or whether this is the prophecy that his dad, you know, the fulfillment of that prophecy that he has a dark side that has to be dealt with.
Right.
But the sexual violence of that scene, I think, was a big tip. I mean, it's also what we like, you know, that's where we start to reveal that something's really wrong. We see the brand, you know, Sam's acting in a very weird way. We see that shift in his face, and then it's a completely different guy, right? I mean, he's cocky and sassy and mean and, you know, snarling, and as opposed to, you know, our usual Sam. And so that, again, all of that stuff was fun to play with and to find those little triggers, those little tips, you know, for the audience and try to tell them what's going on.
What were the conversations like with Jared in terms of bringing that out? Because we'd never seen that side of him.
Again, it was really just a matter of discussing what the expectations were. You know, I mean, like, we have to play this straight. We have to play this as, you know, and again, these guys bring almost everything to the plate. There's you know, there's it's not a lot of you know, we need to go down this road. You just have to say, this is where we're headed. And they take off. You're just hanging on and trying to keep up with them.
Right.
You know?
Right. Now, what about the pregame conversation with Alona? Because obviously that's such an intense scene for, you know, like, we're all friends. They're all professionals. I get it. But you got 6'4" Sam throwing her around in a bar, and it's not an avenue that show goes down often.
No, not at all.
Like I've seen a lot of Supernatural and have been involved, and I was like, whoa, you know, it definitely was a dark turn in a very effective way. By the way,
from a beloved character.
Yeah, Alona's also not like girl he picked up in bar. Like, it's a character we know.
Well, exactly. And she says in the scene, you know, we didn't exactly part on good terms last time. So we had that backstory of the reveal of John being responsible for her dad's death and her, you know, the high emotion of that. And that was like 5 or 6 episodes earlier. I mean, again, I give the writers credit. They didn't go back and explain all of that necessarily. Like, they sort of assume that the audience is up to date.
We fill in the blanks.
Great. Yeah, it's so great. I mean, I can tell you, as we all are working in this industry, there's a lot of temptation to go, last time. You remember last time.
That's right. Yeah. Exactly.
Explain every second of last time.
Right.
I mean, he goes on, and he tells the story, so you get the information, but you don't get it, you know, and if you haven't watched the episode, you still get the information, but it's not, they start out assuming that you know what's going on with these characters. Mm-hmm. And again, Joe's somebody that we've come to know and love. I mean, she was a badass in the last time we saw her. I mean, she functioned as a true hunter and sort of showed her colors. And so, you know, going in that she's not just some bar, you know, bartender that's alone in the bar by herself, that she's got some chops. So again, there's some good energy that comes out of that. Again, I don't think that the sexual violence of that scene would have been. It must have either been on the page or discussed in tone, because that's as you said, Richard, that's not something that Supernatural usually goes towards.
Right.
So the threat of that, I think the idea was to really reveal the demon at that point and how threatening and how dangerous he was.
It occurs to me that I feel like that's probably, although a challenging scene to do for any actress and actor and director, to be sure that it gets where it needs to go, but it does so without violating the humanity of the people doing the acting of the scene.
Right.
It's probably handy that those two knew each other.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, again, things have changed very, very dramatically in the last 15 years in terms of how those scenes are handled on set. I mean, then we just worked it out amongst ourselves, you know, between the two actors. And again, as you said, they knew each other. They trusted each other. I was there. You know, we had that opportunity. Nowadays, it would have been a much more discussed and supervised
intimacy coordinator.
Intimacy coordinator, all of that, which is, you know, which is understandable. That to me, to my mind, that's a violent scene as opposed to a
very much
sexual
so. Oh no, it's violent.
Yeah. So at that point, it's really more about stunt coordinating, as far as I'm concerned. Although there is that element of sexual danger to it, or, you know, sexual violence to it. It really had to do. It was really more about coordinating, about fight coordination. You know, of which there's a lot on Supernatural, as you might have noticed.
Yeah.
When this was made, it's funny. People always ask Rich and I, like, did you watch the show before you were on it? And at that time, it would have had to be like, for me, I might have just set my TiVo, you know what I mean, and watched a few episodes. Do you remember, like, there's a lot of stuff you're dealing with here that had been established earlier? How did you do your homework?
Well, almost every show I watch, I go in and I watch. And luckily, in this case, it was the middle of the second season, so I watched all the episodes. And I don't know that I had started to watch it before then. I'm sure I was aware of the show, but again, I probably watched all of the first season and then watched whatever was available of the second season. And I always ask for editor, for cuts in progress, and then I read scripts. So you have, especially a show like Supernatural, you have to be completely caught up.
Yeah,
in terms of story and lore and background and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Luckily, it's a show that I love, so it wasn't painful. It was a pleasure. I get to stay home and do my homework and watch TV. That's what more can I ask?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Still, I don't think people realize the amount of work for directors that goes into prepping, especially on your first episode.
Well, it's also interesting. I distinctly remember, because this is maybe a crass generalization, but this, I think the sense was a lot of the first season, they hadn't quite figured it all out. And it was being figured out in the beginning of the second season. So I kind of went into it feeling like I've got nothing to lose. There's a pretty good chance that I'm not going to get asked back. Right.
Right.
Not many people are coming back. I'm probably going to be on that list. Why not just have, just do the best I can? And luckily it worked. Luckily it came together.
That's amazing.
Oh, great. Here's a question for you. I don't know if you'll remember, because it's a weird detail, but that last punch at the end where Dean punches Sam when they come to, did I miss anything? Was that scripted, or was that Ackles just saying, I'm going to punch?
It was scripted.
Because it could very well just been Jensen adding a beat.
Well, of course, it was a perfect Sam Dean moment, or Jared Jensen moment, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah.
But,
guys, I love that beat.
Those guys work so hard. They work so incredibly hard.
Both
of, that scene where Sam is beating the shit out of Dean. We were doing that, and we were stopping and putting blood on his face between punches, so there would be some continuity to it. But Jensen had to stay in it. He had to stay there, and we'd have to pause, and they'd add blood, and then go back into it and do like two more lines, and then pause and put more. It was. So I give them a lot of credit. They work really hard on that show. A lot of screen time, a lot of work time. That's
exactly. And it paid off. Made it a good show. Well, we thank you so much for joining us today, and heard a lot about you, and I'm glad you went on to do other things, but Supernatural would have been benefited from keeping you on board.
Yeah, well, again, I love doing the show. I missed, every time I go to Vancouver, I try to get over there, but it's just always too crazy. I'm not now anymore, but
don't go now.
Don't go now. Yeah, it's very depressing at this point.
Hello, guys.
Yeah, hello.
Well, you also, this is not the last time we're going to see you, because the Christmas episode is epic. You got to come back on and talk to us again. Okay,
please do.
Yeah, that's a fun one to talk about for sure.
So we'll have you back on.
Every one of these shows has their own, their backstories. Laying Jensen into the water. It was fucking freezing cold. I love those production stories. I love all that stuff.
Oh, great. We love hearing. That's what this is about. So please come back.
Please. Thank you.
Great to see you again, buddy.
Likewise, man.
This is Jared Padalecki stopping in to say hi and let you know that we've got to take a quick break. Thank you for supporting Supernatural then and now. And now, back to the show.
Wow, he was great. What a great interview.
So I have a question for you, Robbie, because sometimes when we do these interviews, you say, wow, Rich, it really gets technical when these technical people come on. It's still fascinating, right? Like, I'm not getting too nerdy with these guys, because I think Miller, like, hearing his approach to directing all this stuff, to me, it's just fascinating.
Yeah, no. I never said it wasn't fascinating to me. I love how into it you get. But yeah, no, this was great too, because Miller, he's just a guy. He feels like a guy our age that's been in the business for as long as, we have. And, has such great stories and wants to tell them. Yeah, it's just fun to hear the stories. And he's telling that's exactly what this podcast is about, right? That's what we want to hear. Like, you know what I mean? What was it like? I love hearing that the crew and the guys were partying the day before Christmas. And so they're kind of smashed with that one scene. I love that kind of thing,
I like his I think his descriptive word, but they were hanging on by a thread.
Yeah. Yeah.
Barely hanging on.
Yeah, which we get.
Miller was a great interview, and so that was fascinating, and I was impressed by how detailed his recollection of the experience was, given that it was so many years ago.
Oh, it's great. We got to have him back.
For sure, we will.
So it's time for mythology.
Mythology.
In courts of law, generally, amnesia is not a defense to a crime.
Your Honor, I object. I don't remember doing it.
Amnesia has a variety of causes, including dementia, when your brain starts to deteriorate due to old age.
Due to what?
Old age.
Huh.
What's the joke here? What am I missing?
I have dementia. I'm doing a guy who has dementia.
I thought it was a joke on me. I thought for sure that was going to be a joke on me because I'm the demented one. All right. Anoxia, when there's a depletion of oxygen to the brain, which I'm always telling you, you're being anoxious.
Now, what happens to there? So, like, if you're underwater too long, or you're playing with a plastic cleaner's bag or something?
Yeah, that's exactly it. You're a doctor. You get it.
You know what? If you can spray paint and do damage to your college campus, or you could do damage to the hippocampus, where the hippos go to college.
That's right. Amnesia also is caused sometimes by damage to the hippocampus. And the hippocampus is the part of the brain responsible for forming, organizing, and retrieving memories. So,
it's a really, 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 really like cool Irish campus.
Hippocampus?
Hippocampus.
Hippocampus. You obviously don't have a hippocampus because you don't have any feelings. You never remember memories.
Oh my gosh.
Head injuries, these can be from a stroke, tumors, or infection. Or, of course, and this is how we know it, from alcohol use.
I resent that being on this list.
I do too.
Luckily, I'll forget it was there as we plow forward.
How many stories of ours begin with, well, Rob was drunk, so he doesn't remember, but
we were on the hippocampus.
But ironically, demonic possession generally isn't listed as a cause for amnesia.
You would think after all these years.
I know. If you're going to put alcohol, at least put demonic possession.
Yeah, man. Come on.
At least. Hey, guys, you ready for some trivia fun facts? Dean's mobile phone account is under the pseudonym Jack Mahogoff, which is used in practical joke wordplay as a way to get someone to say Jack me off. Jack me off. Jack Mahogoff.
It sounds like Jack Mahogoff. Like it doesn't sound like Jack me offer or Jack me off. It sounds like Jack Mahogoff.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, can we use any of this? I feel like this is the dirtiest conversation we've ever had.
Well, try it. Go for it. And let's see. We can always just try to talk about it.
This is the kind of crazy hijinks that happen on the hippocampus. All the hippos.
So Jack Mahogoff, it sounds like you're getting someone to say that they've got a pig, like they're masturbating their pig.
Wow. Just really took a nosedive. This is day 2 of you taking something dirty and just kamikazing it into the dirtiest thing ever. Like this, where we're hovering into like raunchy, and then it's like, wow.
Am I wrong? I'm not wrong. At the beginning of the episode, Sam is checked into the motel under the name Richie Sambora. I think it said Richard, I want to say.
Richard Sambora, yeah.
Yeah, which is the name of the lead guitarist of Bon Jovi.
Indeed. The name of the episode is a reference to a blues song of the same name that Rob Benedict is not familiar with.
You were singing a blues song at the beginning of this episode.
Oh, ironically, I was singing the song Born Under a Bad Sign, which was recorded in 1967 by Albert King.
There you go. And the bar in the episode is just a redress of the Harvell's Roadhouse standing set. So wait, the other bar, not Harvell's.
The Duluth, Minnesota bar.
So they're also
reconfigured.
Wow.
Yeah,
right.
Cool. I didn't know. One thing in that sentence, I didn't know Harvell's was a standing set at that point. I didn't know they left it. They
really went for it.
That's cool.
Yeah. Well, this is another good one. I'm really just continually impressed with season 2. It's
so good. So good. A great episode of this podcast. Great interview with Miller, and just a solid all around everybody wins experience here with episode 214.
100%. Hey, this episode of Supernatural features Jared Padalecki as Sam Winchester, Jensen Ackles as Dean Winchester.
Guest stars included Jim Beaver, Alona Tall, and Vince Murdocco.
Born Under a Bad Sign was written by Catherine Humphreys and directed by J. Miller Tobin.
Edited by David Ekstrom and Anthony Pinker. Music by Christopher Leonards.
Supernatural is executive produced by Eric Kripke and Robert Singer.
The episode featured the following songs: Crystal Ship by The Doors, Ashes to Ashes by Tarbuck's Ramblers, and Back on the Road Again by REO Speedwagon. Interesting that the song that is not there is Born Under a Bad Sign by Albert King.
Yeah, you'd think. The episode originally aired on February 8th, 2007.
This episode of Supernatural Then and Now was hosted and executive produced by Richard Speight Jr. and Rob Benedict.
Produced by Stephen Hine, written by Stephen Hine and Haida Holscher.
And edited and associate produced by Trey Booty.
What up, Booty? Music provided by Tim Wynn.
This episode was recorded with the help of Sonic Fuel Studios.
This podcast is from Story Mill Media.
Follow the podcast on Instagram and Twitter at SPN Then and Now.
And join our Patreon at patreon.com/SPN Then and Now.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Awesome.
If one didn't know better, you'd think that you text him before. I'm like, hey, do me a favor at some point. But hey, you're one who really loves to get people to say dirty things. You have me say things like that all the time.
That's true.
What was the one you had me do to checking into the hotel? It was under the pseudonym. You told me that it was under a fake name. So we checked into the hotel under fake names, and my name was Haywood Jablomi. But Jablomi was spelled D''Jablowme. So I said to the woman, hey, my name's under, the last name is Djalblom. Jablom. That's the last name is Jablom.
Oh my God, that's really so funny.
We were in San Diego. Anyway, good times. Maybe cut. Who knows? We'll see. And so your last one was at the beginning of season 4. Was that your last?
Yeah, I'd have to look exactly. I did. I don't remember. I mean, I did, again, I think I did. Did I do 2?
We should know because we're the podcast host, but we don't.
We just revealed ourselves as not having done all the research.
No, of course.
We may or may not be Robin
It's been
Rich.
a minute, Let's see. Here we go. I did.
Story Mill Media.